Hi, and welcome back to my channel, where I'm going to cover the additional customization options for the Warlock class that were introduced with Xanathar's Guide to Everything. The customizations we will be covering in this video will allow you to enhance your playing experience for the Warlock class by giving you additional avenues to customize your character and provide more detail about them. And D&D does this in a very prompt-friendly way by providing you some examples that you can make use of directly or use them to creatively come up with your own ideas. The Warlock customizations include things like the Patron's Attitude, special terms of the Pact, and Binding Mark. And with the introduction of Xanathar's Guide to Everything, there are some new tables that provide these examples and potential points of inspiration that you can use to add these details to your character. And the easiest way to access this information is simply to go to the Classes button on the right menu, scroll down to the class that you're looking for, in this case the Warlock class, and make sure that you open up the class sheet for Xanathar's Guide to Everything. That will open up a sheet that looks like this. And in this case, we see the Patron's Attitude here, special terms of the Pact, and Binding Mark, all listed. In fact, I scroll down a little bit and there's our table for that. So let's go ahead and cover what each of these particular tables represents. The first customization you can add to your character helps to define the relationship that exists between your character and their patron. As with any relationship, some are good, some are bad, some work well, while others just never should have happened. And the same holds true for this kind of relationship between a patron and their warlock. By defining how your patron relates to your character, you're going to be able to give the DM some story elements by guiding them how that patron would interact with your character each time they had to communicate with one another. This will add a level of immersion to that relationship and will feed back into the immersion level of the adventure itself. And the table within the information sheet does provide a few examples to work with, but because the Pact is really a personal connection between your character and the patron, I highly recommend working with the DM to define how that relationship is going to work and provide the DM some significant levels of input to be able to allow them to come up with the way that they're going to roleplay your patron. Who knows, having the other players listen in on that drama might provide a level of entertainment that might inspire them to further customize their own character. In relation to where the information that you're going to choose should go, it's going to go in the notes section here on your character's information sheet under the Notes tab, simply because it doesn't really dictate anything about your personality, the ideals, the bonds, flaws, or even the appearance of your character. So it really relates mostly to the notes specific sections in the level of detail that you're going to throw in there. The next customization defines a little more around the contract associated with your character's pact with their patron, and provides an avenue for the patron to sneak in special conditions that may or may not define what your character has to do to maintain your patron's favor. These special terms, as they are called, might require your character to do any number of things or act in a very specific way under specific conditions and the like. While it's entirely up to you, keep in mind the DM has to enforce these conditions and might actually define a lot of these conditions because it's going to be coming from your patron. So you're going to want to allow them to bring forth the situations those conditions might be applicable to, so it's best really to involve them early on in the concept. And there are some examples within the table that you can make use of, and they're pretty good examples that you can start off with and simply use them directly or use them to flesh things out a little bit and create your own concept. But you could also work with the Dungeon Master directly and create something completely from scratch that is a blending of both the concepts that you both want to be able to present. And there are really going to be three areas where this information is going to get stored. The first is going to be within your character's note section on their information sheet. You could also make use of a note within the actual overall notes system. That way the Dungeon Master has sort of a more detailed version of what you're thinking there and is able to reference it. Whereas I think there is a character limit on this field, but I'm not 100% certain on that. The third location will most likely be in the Dungeon Master's story notes if they're going to start introducing some form of concept around that level of pact and how detailed that contract's going to get. That way they can integrate it into their campaign. The final customization is something that can change your character's appearance slightly, as it will indicate a physical manifestation of the binding associated with the pact. These could include things like extra appendages, skin conditions, changes in color and skin tone or other body parts and whatnot, and even something that might be mistaken for a simple birthmark. It's really entirely up to you. Other ideas could include how your character behaves after utilizing the magic provided by your patron. For example, maybe they get sick, or maybe they get queasy and have to sit down for a period of time, things like that. It could also be something fantastical in that maybe a body part glows or darkens under certain conditions. Maybe your character grows horns while you're in the process of casting a pact-based spell. The concepts and ideas are only really limited by your own imagination, and this really can be any number of combination of things that maybe even affect your appearance, trigger side effects, or something else. But whatever you decide, consider the ramifications of what happens when your character is in a populated area or is casting something that these side effects or manifestations occur in when you are first introduced to your party. What will their reactions be? This way you can plan how your character is going to react to their surprise or maybe their comments. But depending on the type of binding mark that you have chosen, it can be stored in either the appearance section or the note section of your character's information sheet. It comes down to whether this is something that's going to be physically apparent or whether it's something that is not so obvious. Maybe it's subtle or maybe it's a side effect of something that actually happens. All of the examples presented within the tables can be used directly, rolled for, or even simply be used to inspire your own custom patron's attitudes or specific conditions that are specified in the pact itself your character holds with the patron, and even the marks associated with that binding. It's entirely up to you. The more details you provide to these customizations, the more connected to your character you're going to become, and may be rewarded for that by having the DM include that into their campaign in some way, or potentially providing a few moments of comedic adventure to lighten the tense situations for those social encounters that might trigger reactions to the binding marks if there's something that actually changes your character's physical appearance, for example. Because the Warlock itself is relatively an easy class to play, players can really intermix a bit of their own customizations into it to define how their melee combat works, or even how they cast their pact magic, things like that, and give it a little bit of flair. So providing a few avenues to add a little complexity to the character might allow you as the player to invest more in that character, thus enhancing the overall playing experience as a result. However, that does bring us to the end of this particular video. I want to thank you for watching. I hope you found it useful and informative, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. I wish to thank you for taking the time to watch this particular video. I hope you found it informative and useful to familiarizing yourself with Fantasy Grounds in general, and that you had fun in the process. If you found the video useful and you liked the content of the particular video, go ahead and click that like button to let me know. And if you have any questions specific to the topic covered by this particular video, or just have some comments in general, please feel free to post something in the comments section, and I will do my best to respond to any questions that are asked. Additionally, I do release content quite regularly, and it's generally specific to Fantasy Grounds or 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons at this time. So if you'd like to be notified when new videos come out, go ahead and subscribe and click the notification bell to ensure that notification is sent to you when I release a new video.